Today we're going to have kind of a theme show. In fact, we're going to talk about flooding. And we have some experts on the show. Houston gets a lot of rain, so we're going to talk about the issues that relate to flooding, the buying and selling of the home, what you should do to insure your home properly, and also what should you do if you have flooding in your home. Our first guest he is an expert. He is a realtor. He is the president of Beth Wolff Realtors. His name is Ed Wolff. Ed, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Bill. Appreciate it. We're glad to be here today and tell you a little bit about our experience. We've seen the ups, the downs, the positives, the negatives, and we've seen a lot of different rain events from Tropical Storm Allison to our more recent Memorial Day floods and then the tax day floods of last year.
Yes, and a lot of, if we go back to the history of Houston, even the last 100 years, rain has always been a factor geographically where we're located. Certainly that's a contributing factor, as well as the growth of Houston. We talk about growth all the time on this show as people are moving in here all the time. And that growth and building actually is a contributing factor, too, to the way the water runs or doesn't run off.
It is. Well, and I think the flat nature of our geography plays a very big role in why structures and water flow comes into our structures throughout the region. One of the things that we looked at, Harris County Flood Control District came in and showed us on Google Images, you can actually go back historically and look at some of our neighborhoods that flood, and 99% of the time you will find a covered up waterway that was there naturally that had been either diverted, removed, or moved in order to develop that subdivision or neighborhood. And if it wasn't done correctly, then potentially you'll end up with water flowing. It naturally goes where it wants to go, and it's going to go back to the places that it came from many, many years ago.
Well, let's tell people, Ed, certainly Beth Wolff Realtors, buying and selling homes, you're serving people all the time for these many years, you and your company. But let's tell them about your own personal story. As I mentioned, you are an expert in flooding and real estate. So how did you become that expert? Tell them your story, Ed.
Well, I started back in 2001. My grandfather's house flooded from Tropical Storm Allison. My aunt's house flooded from Tropical Storm Allison. Both of them and their significant other family members moved into my house for a period of 3.5, 4 months till we got them settled. And at the time, we had to dispose of their properties. And then in May of 2016, unfortunately, my house, who in Meyerland had never flooded in 60 years, flooded with about 18 inches of water across the whole house. So I had the experience of dealing with flood insurance through my grandfather and my aunt and being in the real estate business during Allison. And then it was compounded when I was able to use that experience in May of 2016 and on my own house.
Unfortunately, the term "it hits home" really hits you literally in your home. And did you happen to be home when the water was rising?
My wife, my kids, and my dog were all on our bed in the master bedroom. We had seen the water rising. My next door neighbor had called me about midnight and said, "This doesn't look good." And the rain was continuing to come. So I woke the kids up, woke the wife up. We picked everything up off the floor, went throughout the house, went into the closets, got everybody's shoes onto beds and cabinets. And if we could pull a drawer out, we would put it on top of the countertops, and found a way to save a lot of our personal things. And the personal effects are the hardest thing to replace. Furniture's replaceable, the house is replaceable,
Floors,
lives,
carpets, yeah.
and personal property, pictures and memories you can't replace.
And before we take a break, Ed, let's ask this. There are people there, and I forget how many homes were actually flooded, but as people have a home that is flooded, one of the things they think about is, will I ever be able to sell my home? Mm-hmm. So give us a word on what the psychology is there. You're the realtor. You're leading this company at Beth Wolff Realtors. So what's the answer to that?
You know, there's a cycle, and that cycle post-flood is evident, and we looked at it historically all the way back to Tropical Storm Allison, and I'll be able to share with you some of that data as we go on, but I think the answer is it is 100% psychological. The impact is all inside people's head, and the market has a short memory, and the data proves that. And so the answer is you will be able to sell your home.
Indeed. Now, Michelle, Steffen, you are a great resource at Stewart Insurance and
Thank
Risk
you.
Management, and you've even said the other week that you're an insurance geek, and that's because
gosh.
you know so much about
I
it and you're
just-
passionate about insurance.
I know that it's the most exciting thing in the world to talk about, but I absolutely love it. And I love getting into the nitty gritty, the details that most people don't get involved with.
And as we heard Ed and Josh talk about the flooding issues and things going around in Houston, we just get a lot of rain in this city. I mean, we see it all the time. Tell us
Sure.
about some of the insurance consideration other than the fact, yeah, we need to have flood insurance. Yes.
33% of flood losses happen in areas that are not considered high risk. 33%. That's the last factoid that I recall.
That's a
so
lot.
It's a huge number. It's a huge number. So that was my first thought.
Well, what happens, too, as you work at Stewart Insurance and Risk Management, after if someone's home has flooded, they're going to call you, I would think. You're one of the phone calls.
Absolutely. The agent should be included in that. We can be a liaison. We can support and assist in that claims process.
Because there's a whole checklist, I would think, as water is rising. I know I would be making that checklist, trying to protect things, trying to keep water out. Then I'm also envisioning all the phone calls and repairs and things that have to be made. It's incredible.
Absolutely. And I wanted just a key point. In a complete inundation of rising water is what a flood is. So it's not the water damage like, we've talked about in the past, seepage and leakage, or burst water pipes, which is sudden and accidental. Those are very different things.
And that's also, we might as well cover some of the other ones, because I always look at the house as, let's take a box, and the water could come in through a roof damage.
Absolutely.
Or even a windstorm where it opens up a hole in the roof or chimney area, or the flashing.
Exactly.
You talk about that seepage. You can have a slow leaking pipe. You can have a burst pipe. You can have flood. It's crazy.
Absolutely. And water backup of sewers and drains, which would be truly backing up into the home through those water entry points. So all of those specific types of water losses are not covered in a standard home policy unless it's endorsed or the policy is built that way. Flood is completely excluded in Texas. So that's something to consider. Again, 33% of all losses happen in areas where people don't believe they're in a high-risk area. So consider it. It's fairly inexpensive if you go through the National Flood Insurance Program, which is administered by FEMA. It's not an expensive cost. When it gets more expensive is when you're in what they consider a severe repetitive loss home, which I think some of the homes in Meyerland are absolutely considered that. It's if you've had two or more losses that exceed combined the market value of the home, you're deemed a severe repetitive loss. Or if you've had 5 flood claims that are $5,000 in total through each loss.
That's a lot.
That's a lot. That would be a lot. That would be really extensive. But I think the key point is probably those 2 losses that exceed the market value combined. That puts you into a severe repetitive loss category. So for those homes, again, like homes in Meyerland, you can't go through the National Flood Insurance Program in the same way. There's a specialty group that underwrites that coverage, and it is more costly. But there are options. There are absolutely options available, and I believe currently there are 5 grant programs that will support for those homes who have had losses.
This is making me think of 2 things. First of all, for people listening, yes, here in Houston, we're talking about the Houston flooding, but we want to tell people, Stewart Insurance and Risk Management, you're serving people all over the United States with their insurance needs.
We are.
And certainly Louisiana may have some flooding situations. And other places with snow have different things, hurricanes, all these things. But people, when they reach out to you, they can insure no matter what of the 50 states they're in, right?
That's correct. We're licensed in all 50 states.
And let's tell them the phone number there, Michelle.
866-798-2827. Again, 866-798-2827.
And the other thing we want to mention, that as you were telling it, we were talking about the other water potential issues there, and you said a lot of things aren't covered. So that's why it's important to reach out to you or to your company.
Absolutely.
So that you could find out, other than flooding, get flood insurance, no doubt. But if they have the seepage or you want to protect yourself against that, just like when I got my home policy from
Sure.
you, we talked about each one of those things.
Absolutely.
And made sure that we we got those covered in my policy.
Absolutely. It's vital. I think outside of flood, which is probably one of the most catastrophic types of events you could suffer, and it's also probably most likely to occur is flooding. Outside of that, water losses are the most frequently seen, even over fire. So consider that, recognize that not every policy covers it. You need a knowledgeable professional who can walk you through. And I have to say that our group, they relentlessly pursue that customer experience. So I think that if you call into our team, you're going to be handled well. You're going to be guided through the process. We'll educate you through the process and make sure that you know what the risks are.